Hello, my name is Exabu, and this is the first in my cracking series coverage of the original campaign of Unity of Command 2. If you're not aware of the fact, the Western campaign of Unity of Command 2 was updated. It was updated quite a long time ago, and although I had completed the original campaign on Classic back when the game was still new, and until today, even though I was aware that the update was very significant, I hadn't played the new rediscovered campaign at all, and now this changes. I'm getting into it, and as usual, I am doing a series of cracking videos to cover it all, and this is where I look at the campaign charts and got horrified. The game has 45, 47, it's hard to count this many missions, so you can easily expect an 8-part series that spans over months. I mean, what's wrong with you 2x2? How dare you make so much content for your game? Anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun, although one aspect of my playthrough of this campaign is going to work hard to prevent me from having fun because I'm going to play everything on hard. And to be honest, this first part of the series covers the first 2 conferences of the campaign, from Wadi Akarit to Monte Cassino, and I went through it like a hot knife through butter. I guess the horror of the Eastern Front really does teach you something. Also, it's worth noting that I'll use my usual approach towards cards. I never buy them during conferences because they're randomized and I can't tell you or promise you anything with them, but I will use a card if I get the exact same replacement for it during the mission. The first time it happens is actually the Avalanche mission, where I got an additional B26 card and I felt free to use it because I already had one. In any case, whenever I deviate from this rule and I already have a feeling that I might have to, I will note that in the mission playthrough, and it will obviously be something you would have got in previous missions. Finally, because I'm playing this on hard, I'm gonna post all of the full playthroughs of these missions on my second channel, Coach, and I currently occasionally do streams of me cracking these hard missions on Twitch, so if you want to listen to me bitch and moan for hours on end, go and check out my Twitch channel, and in any case, let's look at the missions. Alright, this is the first mission of the entire Unity of Command 2. I don't know if there is any advice to give, although it's actually a good idea to increase the range of your American HQ at the beginning of the campaign, because then you will be able to beef up that tank division next to Magnesi Pass and smash the German mechanized division defending it. And from there on, it's pretty obvious that the American tanks should advance towards Ficus and rush that supply hub facing Fire Pass. The goal of the British in the south is to try and break through, but essentially push against the enemy and prevent them from getting out of the pockets. In the north, British First Army troops should push towards Fondok Pass. The British tank division you're given there should be very helpful with that. And in any case, if you touch the Fondok Pass hex by the end of turn 1, you're doing pretty well, and are very likely to take the objective in time. And from there on, your main objectives are going to be not to forget that you need to take Sfakas. By turn 3, come on, it's got the worst possible defenders out there, and then push towards Enfidaville and Susa as quickly as possible. Your tanks should not waste their time mopping up the defenders in the south. And that Churchill tank specialist step you get at Fondok Pass is really useful in this mission. Because the Tunis mission is such a small one, it's very difficult to give these broad strategic suggestions for how you should deal with it. It very much depends on the specific tactical movements that you commit to, but here are a few things that you can do to make your life easier. 1. Don't disregard your British 8th Army infantry divisions in the south. They are very likely to be very strong. They are in best position for taking Klibia, which I must say is the most difficult objective of this mission, and it's certainly not easily accessible from anywhere else on the map. So attach your bayonets and get set-piece attacking. Even if you don't break through properly, you will bind and maybe distract enemy troops, making it easier for you in the other parts of the front. As for the rest, Obviously, Long Stop Hill needs to go down on turn 1, but I urge you to take it with as few forces as possible and send those air support attacks to damage the tank division that stands between you and Tunis. As you can see, it's got a counterattack token on it, and it is a strong enough division to do a nasty on any attacking forces there. But if you do suppress or damage it enough, it will not counterattack, and you are very likely to push through to Tunis, and maybe even block that railway leading from Tunis to Matter. On the subsequent turns, push through Long Stop Hill. Don't worry about those paratroopers too much. They're a bit too difficult to dislodge right off the bat, so let them stew a little bit without supplies. And to help with that, do a little pincer maneuver around Matter, and ultimately push towards Benzert. It's also advisable to send the strongest tank division you have in the west, across the river south of Tunis, and hopefully clear the way towards Klebia, or maybe even help in that town, which will almost certainly contain a tank division defending it. I have already talked about Husky in the very first video of the cracking series, but let's go over this one again. And in fairness, this is the first difficult mission of the base campaign, and it certainly deserves a revisit. One immediately important thing that you need to keep in mind in this mission is the naval support uses you have been given. They're incredibly powerful, and it's worth leaving a couple of them until later in the mission when you're stuck around Messina, which you will almost certainly be. So limit your naval support on the first turn to one use, which is at Syracuse. This is the only place where you really need it. However, what really decides the mission is the initial placement of your paratrooper divisions, and their purpose is to block the supply hubs between Palermo and Licata. By the way, the American division is slightly stronger, so I recommend plopping it on the coastal supply hub near Palermo. This will cut off the supply to all of the objectives west of it, and in this current state of the game, I found that the counter-attacking troops are not really good at dislodging that airborne division. At the same time, the British paratroopers should land at the bridge next to the Italian HQ and virtually block all of the possible German reinforcements going to the western parts of the island, and I then usually proceed to use this airborne division to clear the area around Licata and then push to the western objectives. As for the rest of the troops, take Licata on turn 1 for that supply bonus and the ability to push west on turn 2. The other American division should go into that nameless port east of Licata. Killing a bunch of Italian recruits there is always nice, and the British should land in Syracuse and around it. Don't forget to plop your HQs and repair whatever bridges you have access to. I also recommend you not to hurry with your supply hubs, because right now and next turn you will get a better position for one. Once you succeed with all of this and still have 3 barrages of your naval supports, the rest of the mission is pretty much going to figure itself out. On turn 2, rush your tanks north and block that bridge west of Catania Airfield as you start pushing west of Licata and clearing that area. Don't forget to repair the bridge between the nameless port and Licata and set up a supply hub in that little stretch of railway. You may also move that American airborne division around so that it's connected to your main troops and is in supply. From this point onwards, all of your activities in the west will be limited to just mopping whatever defenders are left there and taking your objectives. Usually 1 tank division and 2 infantry divisions are more than enough for that. The AI loves plopping a strong tank division to defend Catania Airfield, so this is a very good place to use another barrage of your naval support and kick those tankers out in time, and then send your well-prepared, well-equipped infantry through the mountains towards Messina. Remember, as always, that your engineers, your special forces, especially Rangers and Commandos, are your big friend because they don't get penalties from attacking across rivers. They will be invaluable in pushing along the coast towards Messina. This is another place where you might have to use another barrage of your naval support. Just make sure you leave 1 for Messina proper. Your tank divisions are probably not going to find too much work in this area, so it might be a good idea to reposition them and move them along the northern coast of the island. This is also a good place for setting up a secondary supply hub. In any case, push towards Messina from both sides. If you get a unit with an engineer, step but 2 steps before deadline you're doing really well, and in combination with naval support, the defenders are going to fall reasonably quickly there. Compared to Husky, Avalanche is going to present a much weaker obstacle to you. Nevertheless, there are a few points that you should keep in mind. One general piece of advice is looking at the sheer number of German mechanized divisions in this mission and the amount of space they've got to maneuver in. So prepare for the unexpected and exploit those bridges to prevent the Germans from showing up where you don't want them to. Or alternatively, leave a hole for them to get distracted and make it easier for the guys on the other side of the front. Alright, now let's start with the British forces in this mission. Right off the bat, don't despair, and remember that you are getting another airborne brigade at Taranto on turn 1, so taking the airfield and Brindisi on turn 1 is a no-brainer at all, and the subsequent turns should involve moving along the coast across Bari and towards Foggia. Sometimes the AI manages to destroy bridges between Foggia and Bari, but if it doesn't, just push Foggia, even if it involves some losses. Because as soon as you take it, the Germans will take a bunch of their motorized divisions to relieve it, and in turn will relieve your American front around Napoli and Salerno. If the AI blows the bridges next to Foggia, well, this is why you ought to send most of the British and Canadian troops in the southwest of the country, along the railway leading through Crotone and eventually northwards. Kicking those paratroopers out on the route to Foggia might involve some losses, but if you see that you need to take Foggia and everything else is failing, just go ahead and accept those losses. And obviously, once Foggia is yours and safe, you should send your British troops further along the coast towards the last objective, and I recommend you to save 1 naval barrage, just in case something goes really bad at Ortona or Gustav Line at the end of the mission, and you need that additional oomph there. And speaking of Gustav Line, this is the main ultimate objectives for the troops landing around Salerno, and on turn 1, the Germans will certainly try to counterattack. Just keep in mind that you're getting a naval defensive bonus in some of those hexes. You can look at them by clicking on the ship. It's actually a somewhat risky but a reasonably good idea to plop a division on the other side of the bridge next to Salerno. It will get attacked by that tank division, but it will be able to take that supply hub east of it and pretty much cut the entire supply of that area, meaning 1 less tank division to deal with. As for the rest, exploit your firepower advantage, use your naval barrages, use your air support to push all of those counterattackers away, and kick the defenders of Napoli out as soon as you can. Your goal here is not the city itself, but to control the bridges leading to the Gustav Line objective. The objective is not difficult, and the defenders there are pathetic, but if the AIHQ manages to blow those bridges up, you're in for some pain and slow down. Also, as I said, the bridges around Napoli and Salerno function as valves for enemy troops. Leave them open if you want them to come in, and close them if you don't expect or really don't want any counterattacks. The British armored division that eventually comes to Salerno is hugely helpful in dealing with German troops between Napoli and Foggia, and I typically use it to rush towards Ortona and maybe even take it with some naval support, because at that point it might be your only really fast unit that is relatively close to Ortona. There isn't really too much to talk about Volturno Line. This mission really feels like something in between other things. But here are a couple of tips. First and foremost, the maintain breach objective is very telling. The Germans will counterattack there if they see any kind of weakness. So beef the division sitting there as much as you can. It's actually a good idea to give the American HQ the entrenchment capability. Actually, in this playthrough of the campaign, actually forgot to do that. But if there is no entrenchment, give those guys no retreats and take that mountainous hex northeast of the objective. This will make it more difficult for the Germans to shuffle their units around and launch multiple attacks during the same turn, eventually preventing the AI from attacking in the first place. Next up, Pescara. Don't expect huge maneuvers here, obviously, and the only key here is bringing in infantry with experience, with engineers, and with artillery. Don't forget that Special Forces steps negate the advantages of enemy entrenchment and is cumulative with engineers, so plan the specialist steps of your infantry troops there accordingly. Now on to the rest. As you can see, Campobasso is defended by a motorized division that has a rear guard ability on, so you only need to do a feint attack on them and they'll retreat and clear the objective for you. The tank division in Rapido has counterattack, so it's really not a great idea to rush that objective. You really don't need to. So I recommend surrounding that hex with your artillery heavy divisions first, and then just steamrolling those tanks with your suppressive fire and subsequent attacks. At this point, you're pretty much not supposed to do anything else. The Germans are in a reasonably good defensive position here, so being too aggressive is not going to help you in any subsequent battles, but will result in unnecessary losses. Let's start a discussion of Monte Cassino with the fact that the British get to chill in this one. All of the troops on the eastern coast of the peninsula around Pescara aren't going to change anything in this mission, so while you're free to attack and get some experience, make sure you don't commit to any losses because you're not going to break through, and you're not causing enough of a ruckus for the AI to actually bring any reinforcements and make it easier for you around Monte Cassino, which is where the main order of business is, and we'll start with Route 6. We're graciously provided with an airborne division right from the start, and it is the best and the most certain way of taking that objective, so drop those paratroopers there. And the good news is that there is a decent chance of these guys actually surviving and continuing causing trouble for the Germans around Monte Cassino. And so there are 3 other things that you're supposed to do on turn 1. First, you can kick out that motorized division north of Cassino. Obviously, those British divisions need to be pretty well equipped to begin with. You will not be able to add any additional specialist steps to them on turn 1, but that motorized division is rather exposed to suppressing fire and air supports. Second, if you set up lots of artillery and especially engineers and special forces around Cassino before the mission starts and then mount enough set-piece attacks and feint attacks, remember that amphibious special forces steps like Rangers and Royal Marines allow you to do attacks across rivers. In any case, you can actually take Cassino on turn 1 if you get lucky, or if you succeed in kicking that motorized division out, blocking its supply and destroying it on turn 2. Third, remember that virtually the only unit you will be able to use your naval barrage against is that motorized division on the coast, and I recommend you to try and focus all of your air supports, saturation strike, and naval supports to kick that division out and to push your tank divisions through. This is the less defended and the easier approach to Rome, and the sooner you clear it, the better. Finally, I'm assuming fourth, use that French division just east of Monte Cassino to start surrounding it. It'll face no opposition out in the mountains, but it will eventually protect you against any kinds of supply cheekiness that the AI might invent. Because with enough engineers and set-piece attacks and artillery, Monte Cassino is going to fall very quickly once you're surrounded, and letting it stew without supplies for a couple of turns will help with that. Otherwise, use all of your remaining forces to push through Anzio towards Rome. In my opinion, this is the toughest objective of all of them, so do everything to bring your best tanks and special forces or engineer-equipped infantry to that city on turn 4 or 5. The AI will tend to concentrate its defenses around Monte Cassino, Cassino, and Route 6, so you shouldn't have too many obstacles in surrounding Rome, at least partially. And this is it for today. I'm really looking forward to going through this entire campaign. This is going to be epic. And your only tasks are to subscribe, like, and actually watch these bloody things. Cheers.